You felt it, haven't you? That strange tightness in your chest when you say yes, even though everything in your body is screaming no. That heaviness in your stomach after a conversation that left you smiling on the surface but gutted underneath. You can't explain it. Nothing overtly wrong was said. No one yelled. No lines were crossed. But something was taken from you, your energy, your clarity, your choice, and that's the first sign you're being manipulated, because real manipulation isn't loud. It doesn't wear a villain's mask or wave red flags. It's soft, calculated. It cloaks itself in kindness, guilt, obligation, fear, and before you even realize it, you're doubting yourself, justifying things that don't feel right, playing roles in someone else's script. That's how it begins. Not with a demand, but with a smile. Not with a threat, but with a subtle nudge, a sigh, a shift in tone that makes you feel like you owe them something. And the worst part, most of us never notice the strings until we're tangled in them. Because this kind of control doesn't look like control. It looks like love. It looks like care. It looks like trust. But underneath, it's theater, it's chess, it's psychological warfare dressed up as connection. And if you're not conscious of it, you'll spend your entire life as the puppet, never realizing you were born to be the player. Every manipulator follows a playbook. Some do it instinctively. Some have learned it through experience. And some are masters of it. But the tactics are almost always the same. Step 1. Read the room. Before they ever speak, manipulators observe. They watch your reactions. They test your boundaries. They pick up on the micro-expressions, the hesitation in your voice, the way your eyes dart when you're uncomfortable. And then they make a mental map. Where do you crave approval? Where are you afraid to be abandoned? What do you feel guilty for? These are the entry points, because manipulation doesn't begin with control. It begins with understanding. Step 2. Emotional anchoring. They give you what you've been starving for. Validation, praise, a listening ear. They show up when you're most vulnerable. They offer just enough warmth to make you let your guard down. But there's a catch. This kindness is never free. It builds emotional debt. And soon, you find yourself doing things because you don't want to hurt them, even when it's hurting you. Step 3. Distortion. Once you're in deep, the rewiring begins. They make you question your perceptions. You're too sensitive. You always overreact. I was just trying to help. Suddenly, you're the one apologizing. You're explaining your boundaries. You're walking on eggshells in your own life. Step 4. Divide and conquer. They'll isolate you, subtly. Make you feel like no one else understands you like they do. They'll plant seeds of doubt about others, and they'll make you feel guilty for pulling away from them. This is no longer just a game. It's psychological colonization. But here's the most brutal truth. You're not manipulated because you're stupid, or weak, or naive. You're manipulated because you're human, because you have a heart, because you care. And that is exactly what they use against you. If you want to understand manipulation, you have to understand this. Your mind is not neutral ground. It is a battlefield. And the war is not fought with weapons. It's fought with guilt, silence, suggestion, approval, and fear. Most manipulation doesn't happen through force. It happens through influence, through subtle emotional pressure that shifts your decisions without you even realizing it. Here's how it works. The manipulator targets your emotional triggers. They know you won't give in through logic, so they don't argue facts. They manipulate feeling. They figure out what makes you flinch, the fear of being abandoned, the need to be seen as good, the shame of being called selfish. And then they press. Not hard, not at first, just enough to steer you, to make you question, to plant the seed of doubt. And then they designed their behavior to fit them like a key in a lock. That's why it feels so familiar, so hard to resist, so hard to explain. You're not reacting to the current moment. You're reacting to all the moments that came before it. You begin to internalize the script. The manipulator doesn't need to keep manipulating forever. Eventually, you start doing it for them. You silence yourself before they can speak. You compromise to keep the peace. You walk away from your needs and call it maturity. That's how deep it goes. Because manipulation, when done well, doesn't just change your behavior, it changes your identity. You stop being the person who stands up for yourself and start becoming the person who always folds because it's easier. But here's the truth Machiavelli would want you to know. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. You want to measure your emotional freedom? Look around. They exploit the gaps you've never closed. Every one of us carries emotional gaps, a childhood wound that still bleeds, a belief that we're not enough unless we're useful. An old voice that whispers, if you say no, they'll leave. The manipulator doesn't create these wounds. They find them. Who do you keep nearby? Who do you make excuses for? Who do you walk on eggshells around? And more importantly, what part of you is still afraid to leave the game? Because once you see it, once you name it, the war changes. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with clarity. To never be manipulated again, you don't need to become cruel. You don't need to become distant. You need to become clear, because the antidote to manipulation isn't force, it's emotional immunity. And that begins with one brutal truth. You don't rise above manipulation by being good. You rise above it by becoming conscious. So let's build your shield. Piece by piece. Pattern recognition is power. The manipulator's greatest weapon is your emotional autopilot. They rely on you not noticing. So your first job is to observe without reacting. What kind of people do you feel drawn to, even when it hurts? What kind of dynamics make you feel responsible for others' emotions? What words make you feel guilty, small, indebted? Write them down. Study them. Every answer reveals a lever someone can pull. If you can spot it, you can stop it. Strategic detachment. Emotional immunity does not mean becoming cold. It means creating space between stimulus and response. It means learning to sit with discomfort instead of fixing it, hear criticism without collapsing, hear flattery without surrendering. Machiavelli didn't advocate for cruelty. He advocated for calculation. He understood that reactivity is weakness because it lets other people steer you. So instead of giving in to every emotional wave, pause, zoom out, choose. The next step is to become unpredictable. Manipulators thrive on predictability. They know if they cry, you'll comfort them. If they praise you, you'll drop your guard. If they threaten to leave, you'll beg them to stay. Break the rhythm. Be the person who says no when it's expected you'll say yes. Leaves the room when they expect an argument. Refuses to explain when they demand a justification, not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. You are not here to play the role they wrote for you. You are here to rewrite the script. Focus on building inner authority. At the heart of manipulation is this: they convince you they know better than you do. So the ultimate immunity is self-trust. This isn't arrogance. It's quiet confidence in your own inner compass. You stop seeking permission. You stop outsourcing your decisions. You stop asking people how to feel, and when that happens, the entire structure of control collapses. Because the manipulator can only manipulate who you pretend to be, not who you truly are. It's easy to call out manipulation in strangers. It's much harder when the person manipulating you is someone you love, a parent, a partner, a friend you've known your whole life. These are the battles that don't leave bruises, but leave you questioning your sanity. Because here's the paradox. The people closest to us can shape us the most and harm us the deepest. When manipulation is wrapped in love, it becomes invisible. I'm only doing this because I care. You're too sensitive. I was just joking. You've changed. You're not the same anymore. They don't use force. They use confusion. They don't forbid you from choosing. They make you feel guilty for choosing differently. So you stay. You shrink. You silence yourself to keep the peace. And eventually, you forget what peace even feels like. You begin to disappear. The most dangerous manipulator isn't the loud one. It's the one who makes you doubt your perception. They twist the narrative just enough so you question, did I overreact? Am I being selfish? Maybe it really is my fault. This isn't just control. This is erasure. You learn to walk on eggshells. You edit your words before they leave your mouth. You abandon your truth to maintain their comfort. And in the process, you abandon yourself. Why is it so hard to leave? Because it's not just about walking away. It's about unhooking yourself from the invisible contracts you didn't know you signed. The belief that loyalty means self-sacrifice. The idea that love should hurt because that's what you grew up with. The fear that if you stop pleasing them, you'll be alone. The manipulator doesn't hold you in place. Your unhealed wounds do. So what do? You don't start by confronting them. You start by reclaiming you. Name it. Call it what it is. Not misunderstanding, not conflict, manipulation, emotional control, psychological warfare. Set boundaries that don't require permission. A boundary is not a negotiation. It's a line, and your job is to hold it, even when it shakes. Prepare for backlash. The moment you stop being controllable, they will accuse, blame, guilt, cry. Not because you're wrong, but because their power over you is breaking. Let the silence do its work. You don't have to explain. You don't have to convince them. Your absence is the loudest truth. And yes, it will hurt. But remember this. The pain of leaving is temporary. The pain of staying lost in someone else's story lasts forever. The moment you reclaim your power, the world will test it. People will push. They'll poke at your old wounds. They'll tempt you to slip back into your old compliant self. But this time, you won't flinch, because you're not just breaking free. You're building something stronger in its place. This isn't about being emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally sovereign. Learn how to master the pause. The most powerful moment in any manipulation is the moment before you react. That split second when your emotions rise. Anger, guilt, shame, the need to please. That's the moment they're counting on, because if they can get you to react, they can steer the narrative. So instead, pause. Feel the emotion, but don't obey it. Observe, breathe, choose. Machiavelli taught that impulse is a weapon, but only when it's used consciously. Disarm with silence. Silence is not passive. It is disruptive. In a world obsessed with instant responses, your calm refusal to react becomes radical. When someone pushes your buttons, stay still. When they guilt trip you, don't explain. When they expect a fight, give them nothing. Silence confuses the manipulator. It forces them to face themselves without a scapegoat. And in that void, you regain control. Train your inner witness. The manipulator doesn't just attack you from the outside. The real danger, they awaken the inner critic already living inside you. That voice that says, "You're being too harsh." Maybe they're right. You should feel bad. To become untouchable, you must separate from that voice. Observe it, name it, but never obey it. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your awareness is your shield. Let go of being good. You've been conditioned to believe that being agreeable, accommodating, and kind at all costs is what makes you worthy. But Machiavelli, and every great thinker of power, knew the truth. Goodness without discernment becomes a cage. It makes you predictable, pliable, easy to control. You don't need to stop being kind. You need to stop being conditioned by kindness. Start being clear. Start being whole. Start being unavailable to manipulation. Know what you stand for. The most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who cannot be swayed by tactics, because they are grounded in purpose. When you know what you stand for, your values, your lines, your identity, manipulation loses its grip. You become immune to flattery, resilient to guilt, unafraid of being disliked, because you are no longer guided by approval, but by principle. There is a moment, quiet, private, irreversible, when you realize no one else is coming to rescue you. Not the apology you hoped for, not the clarity that was never given, not the validation that used to feel like oxygen. You realize it's you. You are the one who must pull the final thread. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Freedom isn't just walking away from the manipulator. It's walking away from the version of yourself who needed them. The version who traded peace for approval, confused love with loyalty, thought survival meant silence. That self, the one who shrank, complied, contorted, served a purpose once. But now you see. And once you see, you can't unsee. So the real question becomes, what will you do with this vision? You can return to the performance, nod, smile, keep the peace, pretend, or you can make a different choice, a bold, quiet, final choice, to never again abandon yourself for belonging, to never again call manipulation love, to never again justify what keeps you small. Machiavelli knew, he who builds on the people builds on the mud. In other words, if you let others define your worth, your truth, your direction, you will always be rebuilding your life on unstable ground. But when you define yourself, when you no longer seek permission, you become dangerous, not to others, but to every system that once fed off your confusion. So here is the final cut. You do not owe access to anyone who twists your clarity. You do not have to stay in dynamics that erode your dignity. You do not need to explain your boundaries to those who never honored them, because the moment you choose truth over tolerance, integrity over image, sovereignty over silence, you don't just stop being manipulated, you become ungovernable. And from that moment forward, no one holds the strings but you.